Thanks for watching this portion of Garage Logic today on our YouTube channel, and hit the subscribe button if you wouldn't mind. And also thanks to our friends at Everest Men's Health for sponsoring this. Go to everestmenshealth.com today to see if they can help you with better energy and better health. And catch the Garage Logic podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
I find it interesting that the New York Times has sent a team here.
I did not know that.
On the cover of the Sunday Pioneer Press yesterday. Crowd protests police killing. Anger, frustration voiced in peaceful gathering in Minneapolis. Jay Center, Sophie Kasakov, and Sergio Olmos from the New York Times. That's the byline. I'm assuming they were here. And it smacks of them wanting this to be as visibly riotous as the George Floyd spring of 2020. And it fortunately has not become that. Chanting the name of Amir Locke, a large crowd of protesters marched in frigid weather in downtown Minneapolis on Saturday to voice exasperation and anger over the conduct of law enforcement officers nearly 2 years after the murder of George Floyd. So clearly, I think the New York Times must consider itself the final answer on these kinds of things. We'll tell you
what you need to know.
We'll tell you what you need to know.
Yeah.
Locke, 22, was fatally shot. We know that. Locke was not named as a suspect in the warrant, according to authorities, nor was he a resident of the apartment, according to Jeff Storms, a lawyer representing Locke's family, who said that Locke was staying there with a cousin. Say his name, shouted protesters who were marching together, spanning more than one city block. And this goes on and on and on. I won't read it, but I just found it terribly interesting to me that a cover story on Sunday's Pioneer Press was the New York Times crowd in town, telling us that we must live in a very rotten place to have another police shooting. We have learned this. Court records show another man living in the apartment where Amir Locke was shot and killed. This was reported by Fox News on Saturday. Court records show another man living in the apartment where Amir Locke was shot and killed last week had previously threatened officers during an arrest in 2018. Fox 9 has confirmed the man who lived at that apartment where Amir Locke was staying was a familiar person to police after previous calls to the apartment. The man had been arrested this past November for a domestic violence incident at the same address along Marquette Avenue. Before that, police had a run-in with him during a traffic stop along Girard Avenue in November of 2018. During the incident, police say the man refused to identify himself to officers after he was pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt. Police eventually were able to identify the man and ultimately determined he had a warrant out. During the arrest, police say the man was confrontational, threatening officers, refusing to obey commands, and trying to headbutt an officer during transport to jail. Court papers say the man said he would beat up the officer if the officer wasn't carrying a gun, and later made offensive comments about the officer's family. Aside from the attempted headbutt, one officer suffered a hand injury trying to bring the man in control during his transport to jail. Police haven't said why they wanted a no-knock warrant for this February 2nd search. The man in question was listed on the search warrant, but it's unclear what connection, if any, he had to the case St. Paul police were investigating. No records could be found showing he had been arrested following Wednesday's shooting. In other words, the fellow that they searched for has yet to be arrested. When the man in question had previous run-ins with police, as far as Fox 9 can tell, Amir Locke had a clean criminal record. Locke's family also confirmed this week that Locke had no criminal record and a legal permit to carry a gun. But it sounds to me that the warrant was issued for the fellow who was supposed to be living there, and this Locke had the unfortunate timing to be using it as his crib for a while. Now, I have two responses from police.
Okay.
It's a dreadful video to watch.
Yes, it is.
I talked to a former Minneapolis cop today who's been retired for quite some time, and he was wondering why the no-knock warrant was issued, and also wondered why someone sleeps with a loaded weapon.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
The St. Paul police did not request a no-knock warrant. They requested Minneapolis's help and sent them a conventional warrant.
Okay.
Minneapolis police said, no, you must redo this and send us a no-knock warrant. I'm not smart enough to know why that would be. Obviously, a no-knock warrant would give police a heads-up advantage.
Yes.
We have often heard from the Gumption County deputy who is in law enforcement. And he writes, in the past few days since the Amir Locke shooting, I can only shake my head at the printed and televised media coverage. The narrative the left continues to push obviously takes precedence over the facts. Yes, the death of Amir Locke was unfortunate. However, I can assure you this. Not one member of the Minneapolis SWAT team wanted to shoot anyone. However, the television and print coverage of the incident completely disregards the fact the officers were in the apartment that morning, also had the right to live and defend themselves. The media coverage and statements by our elected officials almost unanimously insist, and at the minimum imply, the only reason Mr. Locke was shot was simply for being a black man. That is pure rubbish. Yesterday's Star Tribune had a front page story with the headline, Minneapolis again left to ask why. In the article, the reporter wrote, Locke stirred, holding a firearm. Joe, stirring in bed, or in this case a couch, is when you shift from sleeping on your side to sleeping on your stomach. Stirring is not rising up with a gun in your hand, pointed at the police who are yelling, police, search warrant. Let me stop right there. In the video, I didn't see him literally pointing the gun at police, but I clearly saw him begin to awaken.
It's coming out,
and out with his right hand came a pistol.
Correct.
And we were also, the group of us were sent a still shot in which the police at first entered the apartment. I don't know if you guys saw the still shot. But it's almost, and I wasn't there. I'm not that person in that position, but it's pretty tough to see that he has a gun from that still shot.
And aside, why would Mr. Locke be sleeping with a gun anyway? In my 30-year law enforcement career, I have slept with a gun in a grand total of 0 times. The thought never occurred to me. Granted, there is nothing illegal about sleeping with a gun, but I cannot help wonder what compelled him to do so. The narrative that continues to be pushed is the police are the problem and need to be feared because they are looking to shoot people just because of the color of their skin. That narrative is obscene. It is not only obscene, but a complete denial of reality. Last week, the Wall Street Journal reported the police killed 4 unarmed black men in 2021. However, the same article pointed out 10,000 black men, women, and children were murdered, and yet there was no outrage for those 10,000 lost lives. Instead, we are fed the repulsive message that the police are racist and race relations in America are no different today than they were in 1860. We keep being told no-knock search warrants are the problem. No, the problem is people pointing guns at the police or, in the Breonna Taylor case, shooting at them. The police are not driving through neighborhoods saying a black person lives in that house. Let's get a search warrant and break into their house for no reason at all and start shooting. Yet that is exactly what the left would like us to believe. You can give me a we don't know that, but I have it on good authority that on the same day of the Amir Locke incident, a carjacker was shot by a gun permit holder in Minneapolis. Why have we not heard one single thing about this? How come the story would not be considered newsworthy?
Yeah, that is interesting.
If it has been reported, and I missed it, but as of today, and he wrote this today, I have personally not seen anything. As always, keep up the great work and never stop pushing back. Signed, the Gumption County deputy.
There were actually 2 incidents. It was the one he just referred to, and then another one where somebody broke into a home and was put down.
And here's another Fox 9 piece. John Pills has 25 years of experience as a sergeant for a Twin Cities metro area sheriff's office. He's also written a book examining police use of force and the strained relationship police have with some in the African-American community. On Sunday, he offered his perspective on the police killing of Amir Locke. Locke's death is a prime example of what is causing the divide that Pills studied in his book, Finding Shared Understanding Between African-Americans and the Police through Simulated Experiences. And it goes on to say, Pills believes the limited body camera video he has seen so far of Locke's death does not show any wrongdoing on the part of the Minneapolis police officers. I don't want to downplay what happened to Amir, Pills said. Seeing the things I've seen and all the search warrants I've done, this could have happened to me dozens of times. And it's not based on the ethnicity of the person we're going in on. You've got one option. Well, you've got 2. Either you take a bullet or you give a bullet. And as sad as that sounds, that is a fact of life. Mm-hmm. With growing public pressure for the officers involved in Locke's death to be fired and prosecuted, Pills says if that happens, He thinks it would send ripple effects across a profession that is already seeing officers leaving in alarming numbers and struggling to replace them. It's getting to the point where cops won't do their job. And if we get that bad, we're not going to have cops. We're going to have chaos, Pills said. They're scared to death to do their job. I've talked to more cops that are not doing their jobs now because if I pull the trigger or I get into a situation where I have to pull the trigger, I'm going to go to prison. Now more than ever, Pills believes both sides need to come together. Until then, he thinks things will only get worse. We need to sit down and have conversations and understand each other better. We do have to sit down and talk, period, he said. But the activist community has already made up its mind.
Mm-hmm. It's tough to have a conversation when one side of every issue, I'm not just singling out this one, is unwilling to compromise.
They've made up their mind that these officers must be fired and prosecuted. And this had to be a tragic death for the parents of this guy. The parents have been public and speaking out against it. Who can blame them? This is dreadful.
Agreed.
Just dreadful. I'm not. I'm going to count on the Gumption County deputy to email me again and explain the who, whys, whats, and whens of no-knock warrants. They are now suspended in Minneapolis. There won't be one.
Usually when the offender who they're going after is known to be violent in the possession of firearms, or there's large quantities of drugs, cash, and possible firearms protecting that.
Well, based on the criminal record of who the warrant was apparently issued for, he was violent, with a record of being violent to the police.
An extensive record.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize, I realize I'm asking the wrong people, but I'll ask you guys anyway, and I don't have an answer myself. If this was executed, this search was executed as a knock warrant, announcing your presence, would that, in fact, if the bad guy was in there, would that put the officers in danger then? Say they would have answered that knock on the door with gunfire.
If they're knocking on the door for the fellow I just read you about with his extensive criminal history, doesn't it logically stand to reason that they're in danger?
Right.
Yeah.
Hence the no knock.
Right.
Then the next question is, how and when do we arrest these people?
Well, you can also look at it this way. It stands to reason logically that if your house is broken, you're sleeping. They have a key to the apartment. They open the door and begin ranting at this guy. Police, search warrant. Get down on the floor. And maybe in his, I'm being charitable in my thinking, but in his haze of just waking up, maybe he thought he was suffering from a home intrusion and had the gun. Now, we don't know why he had the presence of mind to have a gun while he was sleeping. I don't have an answer to that. But it could be understandable. Well, it's either one of two things. He either was afraid of something, or he's not the saint he's been made out to be, although he might be a saint. He has no criminal record.
Sounds like he is.
Yeah, he has no criminal record.
Right, and that's why he had the permit to carry.
Right.
But the
because
question
he passed all the tests.
But the two questions I have are, what would force him to sleep with a gun because it's ripe with so much trouble and accident?
Well, a lot of people have a firearm right next to their bed.
That's fine. I understand that. Yeah, that's self. But this was, he had it in his hand already.
Well, we're assuming that he was asleep, sawing logs with the firearm in his hand. It might have just been laying there, and as they approached, he picked it up. I don't know. We're making wild speculation here that's not going to do any of us any good.
Sure, but if there's, the other question I have is, if there's a knock on the door and he wakes up, how is he going to open the door with the police there? Is he going to bring the gun with him? Or is he going to go, oh boy, my roommate is in big trouble?
So the other thing that I don't know if you guys saw this, I think it was Friday because we didn't do the show Friday. But did you guys happen to pay attention, Joe? I know you weren't around, but did you guys happen to pay attention to the press conference that was accompanied by Mayor Fry
Well,
I saw
the
him
assistant.
speak.
And-
I was out of news contact for almost 4 days.
The reason I'm bringing it up, I believe it was Friday. So Fry's up there. I forget the name of the assistant police chief. She was the one that was quoted in the initial story last week.
Amelia Huffman?
Thank you. Nakima Levy Armstrong bull rushed the press conference and started shouting at both of them, and they both just stood there and took it. To which I'm saying, how is any of this supposed to be taken seriously? And how are we supposed to have a conversation when one side of the aisle in this, and again, we don't know all the facts yet, but when one side of the aisle is so unwilling to listen?
Not only that, when one side of the aisle, meaning Nakima, I sent her a text. She read it on Thursday, and she never responded. Now, I told her, this is not braggadocious, that we had 1.3 million downloads on Garage Logic last month, so her reach to get her message out would be great to the masses out there, and she doesn't respond. So what does that tell you? She only wants it one way. She's not worried about being fair and everything. She's worried about her only cause, and this is the fourth time that she's turned us down.
Do you realize, you'll recall that initially we were a bit puzzled as to why Nakima was so instantly notified
Contacted,
by the
I
Minneapolis
do
Police
not
Department.
like that.
And our theory was, for lack of a better one, is that because she's part of a larger safety committee that Fry assembled, that maybe that was one of the provisos that she had to be contacted when something like this occurred. It's being reported today. She wants nothing to do with that committee, has already written them off, and will not be working with the city.
She's a big baby.
Well,
so
he
then
had a
what?
death there, so
But what is she standing to gain then?
I have no
by doing this.
Well,
She's never found a camera she didn't like, but yet then when
she's
Go ahead.
dictating and guiding the narrative, she's leading the narrative. She's controlling
The
it.
narrative is police are racist and black people are the victims of that racism. That's the narrative. And the narrative has contained in it this preposterous belief that many of the things all Americans consider to be criminal should not be criminal. And if you're looking at the death of Amir Locke from the activist point of view, it's clear that the only thing they see was an innocent black man shot. They're not going to take into account that there was a warrant. They're not going to take into account that he had a pistol clearly in his right hand. None of that's going to be taken into account. They are racist white men. I bet, for all I know, there was a black officer involved in the...
Yeah, because we don't even know the identities, correct?
Yeah, no, you got the name of the officer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Hanneman. That's all they're going to see. There's been no... As our civilization deconstructs, there is no more effort. And this doesn't even apply strictly to black people. This can be just as easily applied to white people. As our civilization destructs, we're seeing such a lack of moral and ethical integrity that there is no room in the brains of activism, no matter how extreme on either side. There's no room in the brain anymore for logic and wisdom and wise counsel and saying, boy, I wish we didn't lose our fellow that way, but their police had to show up there. There was a warrant, and he had a gun. We have to consider that. That's not going to be discussed. Here's from Steve in the belly of the beast. This is fascinating. Aisha Chugate. He says, I have no idea how to pronounce her name. Aisha Chugate replaced Lisa Bender in Ward 10.
Okay.
We all know the axiom in which the current public official will make us long for the previous one. That could prove to be true in this case.
Oh, God.
Ms. Chugtai has already begun calling the police-involved death of Amir Locke a murder. Either she's not well schooled in the legal definition of the word, or she's a virtue-seeking activist of the highest order.
Ding, ding, ding.
We can all recall the reckless rhetoric of Jacob Fry after the death of George Floyd. The boy mayor's carelessly chosen words enabled the mob, and we all know what happened. With the likes of Chugtai now on the city council, I guess the only thing we have going for us are the frigid temperatures and the hope that the cold winds of February will prevent chaos in this city. Keep pushing back. Well, here's her note to her neighbors. Ward 10 newsletter written by Aisha Chugtai. As many of you know, on Wednesday morning, Minneapolis Police Department officers carried out a warrant for the St. Paul Police Department that resulted in the murder of Amir Locke, a 22-year-old black man. That was not a murder.
It was not a murder.
Over the past 3 days, my office has talked with city leaders, the mayor's office, Ward 10 residents, community leaders and organizations, and other elected officials to understand what happened, share information, and gather questions. That's disingenuous right off the bat, lady, because you've already made up your mind. By the end of the evening yesterday, the city had released police reports, personnel files on the officer that killed Amir, and body camera footage of the incident. You can access that information here. Then she provides a link. Below is a list of questions that remained after the city released this information. 1, was Amir's name on the warrant? 2, why did MPD accept the SPPD request to carry out this warrant? Because that's what police departments do, lady. Who asked for a no-knock warrant, and who asked for it to be executed outside of standard hours? Have all the officers present at the scene giving their official statements? When will those be public? Who authorized the use of SWAT? What was the role of Hennepin EMS that morning? Why were they called on the scene before anyone was hurt? I'm unaware of that. Why were there 3 minutes before Amir received medical care? Why didn't EMS come to Amir? Why was he carried down to them? Reports show that MPD went to two different apartments before entering the one Amir was in. A bullet also went through the ceiling. Why did they endanger everyone in that apartment building? Is the city providing the requested on-site trauma support for the people living at the Bolero Flats? Our office has done all we can to find the answers to these questions. Most of them remain unanswered, but we know now that Amir's name was not on the warrant. Also, the St. Paul Police Department confirmed that MPD demanded a no-knock warrant, which the mayor's office has not addressed. The mayor put out a press release this evening saying that he is placing a moratorium on no-knock warrants. This is a direct result of community pressure. This also comes after the mayor has repeatedly claimed to have banned no-knock warrants in Minneapolis years ago. Amir Locke's family and many community members demanded this action, and it came far too late. The family of Amir Locke today held a press conference detailing how Amir was a vibrant young man who did nothing wrong, was loved by so many people, loved his family, and who had many goals for the future. I am committed to ensuring his family's demands for justice are met. Again, lady, you are signaling as strongly as possible that you are not willing to listen to anything.
Nope.
You have your mind made up. You're being disingenuous to the 10th degree.
Yeah, I'm reading along with you and ahead of you. And what is she's doing? What she's doing here is fanning the flames.
Right. The family's demands include all officers are prosecuted and fired, and the city and media speak truthfully about Amir and not tarnish his character. I've seen nothing about tarnishing his character.
No.
The city needs to fulfill these demands, including officially retracting previous statements that Amir was a suspect. Amir Locke was a young man who had his whole life ahead of him, and he was taken away from him and his family. Our community is beyond angry, hurt, and tired. For those looking to attend events in support of Amir and his family, there's a protest being organized for the community to be together and demand answers. And then she links that to some Facebook site. In the coming days, I am committed to pursuing answers for Amir's family and community, finding the most accurate information about the events that led to the tragic loss of Amir's life, and communicating what I know with you. If you have additional questions, please keep reaching out. This is a difficult time for so many in our community. We all have a role in showing up and caring for one another. The Ward 10 office is committed to our part in that, and I hope you are too. In solidarity, Aisha Chugtai. What you're in solidarity with, Aisha, is your opposition to a police force.
Yeah. She's fanning the flames, and she's also trying to control the narrative.
Terribly irresponsible.
You know what that was the definition of as you read through that? Someone that is more... it wants to be important rather than useful.
Officious.
That's the definition right there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just dreadful. She's dreadful.
Right? Did you actually just say we're going to want Lisa Bender back?
I did not say that.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think Lisa Bender would have been dissimilar.
True.
But this Aisha has no, she didn't pull any punches.
Yeah.
Read the beginning again. That is so disingenuous. As many of you, this is the beginning again. As many of you know, on Wednesday morning, Minneapolis Police Department officers carried out a warrant by the St. Paul Police Department that resulted in the murder of Amir Locke. All right. Well, it wasn't a murder. Second paragraph. Over the past 3 days, my office has talked with city leaders, the mayor's office, Ward 10 residents, community leaders and organizations, and other elected officials to understand what happened, share information, and gather questions. No, you're lying, lady. You've already established what happened in your mind.
Right.
You have no room for reason in your thinking. None.
Wait, downtown is not included in Ward 10, by the way.
Yeah.